you've worked for the DEA for 30 years. So, and even in my short time in the SEAL community, I saw a shift largely
Mhm.
driven because I joined pre 9/11 and then post 9/11 drastically. It was just a different job. Pre 9/11, it was all conceptual. We trained for the enemy that we thought that we were going to face with tactics that were from the rear view mirror. I would actually say there wasn't a lot of forward thinking. And I don't say that negatively. It was just about
Mhm.
30 years apiece. 9/11 hits and boom, drastic shift almost overnight, even though, as you know, a bureaucracy doesn't actually move overnight. So it moved and it shifted. And I'm fascinated to know, I guess, two-part question.
Yeah.
What led you to the DEA? How'd you get started there? And then what have you seen over 30 years when it comes to the execution of your job?
So what led me to it? I guess, the formative years for a lot of people are those few years right after high school. For me, I went to college. I was not the best student in high school. I applied to a bunch of colleges. I got in one, so that's the one I went to. In my senior year, I started interviewing for jobs, investment banking places, stockbrokers, and it just didn't. I wasn't excited about it, and I'm sure though the businesses were not too excited about me. I wasn't too excited about it. Think back to 85 through 89. I'm going to be honest. What show was on TV those 4 years, the big run, Miami Vice? That
Oh,
looked like a pretty cool job. I mean, so, but in all seriousness, I was looking for something that I wasn't going to be in a pod, in an office, 9 to 5. I wanted to be out and about. I wanted to do something different every day. And I felt like I was looking for something that would have some kind of social benefit, like a little more than chasing the dollar. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but just for me, I wanted to do something where there was a little more benefit to the community. And at that time, it was crack cocaine. Like that was the thing. And the violence in South Florida, the crazy shootings, that's what drew me to the job, just to do something exciting that was going to be different.
did
And
you
as far
have
as
a
changes, I'm
yeah,
sorry.
did you have a family history of law enforcement at all? Or
No,
was this a new
no,
path for your family?
no. I mean, my dad was military police in the Army, like I guess probably shortly after the Korean War. Uh, no, no, no law enforcement history. Like I said, it's just something I kind of gravitated to.
Yeah. How has the agency changed in how they tackle your job in 30 years? I mean, that's a broad
Yeah,
question.
it is.
However you want to.
Well, I think first is how the landscape has changed. Like the number one change that I've seen in my 30 plus years, the transition from plant-based drugs to synthetic drugs. And that's something that I think we miss a lot, and we don't see the importance of it. Like, hey, obviously fentanyl is the big drug everyone's talking about, but don't sleep on methamphetamine. In my world, like in my mind, meth causes just as much harm in the United States. It's just a different kind of harm. We don't see it with the 16-year-old dying today
Mhm.
in his bedroom, in his bed. We see it with this progression into homelessness, mental health issues, psychosis, like all these things that come with meth use over 10, 20 years, that you're going to be addicted to it before eventually your body gives out and you die. So that's been the biggest change. As far as how we address it, I hope DEA has gotten smarter. Um, One thing that worries me a little bit, and I guess, hey, I left the agency 3 months ago. There's a mandatory retirement age with federal law enforcement, 57. So I timed out and I was out the door. I hope that there's people that recognize a repeating cycle, that people see things that worked or didn't work in the past, that we have some of that experience still left that can say, like, wait a minute, we tried this 20 years ago and here's what happened, instead of like this constant reinvention, trying the same things over and over and getting the same result and not making progress.
Yeah. I would like to hope that we are going to do that. I think as a species, we have a history of doing the latter, though. We'll just
Hmm.
smash our head against the wall and hope for a different outcome, which
Yeah.
I am no expert in anything, but I think you can find that in a textbook somewhere under the definition of insanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Walk me through that career, the 3 decades through the
Yeah.
DEA. Where did you start? And then just kind of give us the wave tops of
Yeah.
how we're sitting here talking today.
So started as a 25-year-old kid, no law enforcement experience, no military experience. In fact, the first time I applied to DEA, pretty shortly after I applied, I got a letter back in the mail saying, like, you've done nothing with your life, no thanks. But I was pretty determined at that point to make it happen. So I talked to the recruiter, and the choices were military, start maybe at another law enforcement agency first, or they were also looking for accountants. So in my world, I had just graduated college. So I kind of learned how to study in college. I was a much better college student than high school student. So I said, hey, let me do that. Let me go to graduate school and study accounting, make myself more marketable. And I did that. And then next time I applied, I don't know, 2 years later, whatever it was, I was hired relatively quickly. And I've never done any accounting really on the job. But other than to say it does teach analytical thinking, and you definitely have to be an analytical thinker. So I started in Newark, New Jersey. That was my first assignment. And pretty quickly, the government moved me as far away from Newark as possible. I came out to Los Angeles. That was the summer or spring of '92, like right. In fact, I think right around the Rodney King riots is when it was April, maybe late April, May '92. At that time, like I said, it was crack cocaine. That was the big drug. It was going after LA street gangs. I was on a gang task force, and it was kind of using the federal tools to get these significant crack cocaine violators who, by the way, the people in their community didn't want these people selling crack. Like a lot of times there's a lot of talk about, I don't know if it's social injustice is the proper term or whatever it was. It was actually the people living in those same communities that came to law enforcement and said, we don't want this in our community. This is killing our people. Help us get this out of the community. And that's where that push, the attack on crack cocaine came. So after a couple of years doing that, really got into more going after Colombian, like high-level cocaine trafficking organizations. This is probably 93, 94. These are groups that were, the cocaine would obviously originate in Colombia, come through Central America, through Mexico, and be handed off to these Colombian groups. And most of it went out of LA to, say, New York. At that time, New York was the biggest market for cocaine. So they'd have all these ingenious smuggling methods to get the cocaine from LA to New York. That was a big part of it. And through those investigations, DEA learned a lot about the Mexican trafficking organizations, what we call today the drug cartels, who were crossing this cocaine. And really from about 94 on, 1995 on, the job in Los Angeles was going after these wholesale Mexican national drug cartel organizations that were trafficking huge amounts at that time of cocaine. Like if you did a case and you didn't seize 1,000 kilos of cocaine, which was a ton, it probably wasn't something that was even worth talking about in LA at that time. Huge quantities, huge quantities of cocaine coming through. I remember one time these crooks had 1,495 kilos, so a ton and a half of cocaine in one truck. That's the volume of cocaine that was trafficked at that time. And it was going from LA throughout the whole country. That was the time that LA became kind of this transshipment center for Mexican cartel drugs coming into the United States, warehoused in Los Angeles for a couple of days, and then through all the airports, the commercial trucking, the freeway system. Those drugs would quickly go out all around the United States and even to Canada. And like I said, that was the game ever since that time. And it's just the transition of the particular type of drugs trafficked changed. And that's one thing that I stress with people, is because sometimes I hear people who are critical and they say the federal government or DEA specifically was slow to react to fentanyl. I mean, not true at all. Literally, the day Mexican drug cartels started trafficking fentanyl, they were being investigated for starting trafficking fentanyl, because it was the same organizations. It was the same smuggling routes, the same stash houses. These are polydrug organizations. They would move at that time cocaine, meth, heroin, even marijuana sometimes back in the day. And then, 2015, 2016, after Big Pharma did all the marketing for them, right? They just jumped in and said, hey, let's take advantage of this thirst that the American public has for pills. And man, I remember it. There was LAPD guys working at the drug task force, and they hit me up one day in the office and they said, hey boss, we got these chemicals. These traffickers in Mexico are talking about this list of chemicals. What are they going to make with this? And, I looked at it. I have no idea. I said, call the lab and ask the lab. They sent it to the lab. And, you know, within probably like a day, the chemist called back and said, where did you get this? Like, these guys are talking about making fentanyl. That's what this chemical list is for. And right then, like, you know, we knew, like, if the Mexican cartels get into fentanyl production, and again, this is, I don't remember exactly when, 2015, 2016, and I'm sure this particular group that that these guys were investigating wasn't the first to do it, but it was, we knew that this was going to be a game changer, and this was going to change the landscape, because now, you know, fentanyl had been around. Like, the way I explain it to people is 2012 was the height of the prescription drug epidemic in the United States. There was 255 million opiate prescriptions written that year. And I don't know what the adult population of the United States was at that time.
It was under that, for sure.
Yeah. So, you know, that gives you an idea of the volume of opiates that were, quote, legally, you know, sold in the United States. So as everybody realized, like, hey, this isn't the direction we should go. And I don't just mean law enforcement. I mean, you know, American Medical Association, pharmacists associations, as everybody dialed back that number from 2012, if you look at a chart of fentanyl-caused deaths in the United States, and you look at a chart of opiate prescriptions, legitimate opiate prescriptions in the United States, you'll see that every year since 2012, opiate prescriptions went down, and every year since 2012, fentanyl deaths went up. And that is because the drug cartels saw that America had developed this thirst for pills. And people feel way too safe about taking pills, in my opinion, you know.